favorites at ComNet. It's kind of like your kids. You don't tell them you love one over the other, 'cause of course you don't. But this is not my kids, so I do have a particular favorite. As you might imagine, because of the playlist we shared with you, I like music a lot. It's done me a lot of good. In times when I'm happy, in times when I'm sad, a lot of times when I'm bored, and an inordinate amount of time when I'm out walking my dog. And so this session is going to be a story about music. It's going to be a story more than just about music. It's going to be a story about creating spaces and places and communicating with people about music and the power that creates. And how this organization, Austin City Limits, you can see it up there, has helped to put Austin on the map. And y'all probably gotten a sense of this. I think y'all just updated the backdrop for Austin City Limits not too long ago. I noticed there were cranes off there in the background because this town is on a meteoric rise. So we're going to hear that story and the role that these gentlemen played, an instrumental story. They, by the way, are kind enough to be with us because Austin City Limits Festival, ACL Fest, starts in about an hour and 15 minutes. So my good friend Tyronne Walker from the Greater New Orleans Foundation, and I'm going to brag on him for a quick minute. If you all know Mayor Mitch Landrieu of New Orleans, he gave a speech not too long ago about taking down memorials honoring civil war folks. Somewhat controversial. Tyronne at that time worked for Mitch Landrieu and helped to shape and draft that speech. And so it's my distinct honor to welcome him onto the stage along with Bill Stotesbery and Tom Gimbel from Austin City Limits.
You want? Yeah. You want to go middle?
Yeah, I think so.
I like that song. That's actually pretty cool.
It's a great playlist.
Well, great. Well, welcome, guys. Welcome to ComNet. This is a really cool time to talk with you all, particularly because we're in Austin. And the reason why I'm really excited about this conversation, I got to admit, like Austin, I'm from New Orleans, and so we have a lot of similarities between our two cities. Both cities are known for their unique culture and entertainment, particularly music. And so we have, I think, a really awesome festival and jazz fest.
You do?
Well, you know, I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good.
Not bad.
So I'm really excited to get to a part of our conversation that talks about Austin City Limits Fest that kicks off, as Sean said, today, but we'll get to that later. But first, Bill, I want to start with you, Bill Stotesbery, who leads the local PBS affiliate. Right. Talk a little bit about how Austin City Limits even came about as a outgrowth, as a creation of your local PBS station.
Sure. So it was 1970s, early 1970s, and a couple of things happened. At the station, we had been producing a program called Carrascalendas, which was the first multilingual kids educational program that was on television in the U.S., not just public television, but on television. And Carrascalendas was funded rather generously by the Department of Education and allowed us to put a production capability in place that was unusual for a station our size. Also in the 1970s, you know, anybody knows the story of Willie Nelson and the outlaw movement. There was a move from Nashville and other places into Austin where they found a creative community. A number of musicians found a creative community they liked and created something that was very known as Cosmic Cowboy Days or Outlaw Days, or you know, different phrases for it. And so at the station at the time, there were a number of the management guys, producers, directors, the programming head, who were music nuts. And one of the guys decided it would be interesting to try to put on a music show in Austin. He had been producing a music show in another city for a while. And they came together and thought they'd do a Cosmic Cowboy show and bring some of the critical mass that was in Austin together. So in 1974, they taped a couple of episodes. The one that's generally known as the pilot episode is the Willie Nelson episode. That aired finally in 1975. They pitched it to PBS. They got turned down a couple times. And finally, PBS picked it up and it was distributed nationwide, and it's been playing now for 46 years, so
The
45 years.
the longest running television music channel in the country.
Not just in the country. It's actually now, once we've passed by a Japanese music program and a British music program, it's now the longest running live performance music program in the world in the history of television.
Wow.
So
pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So I want to stick with you for a second because you mentioned this guy Willie Nelson, who's a little bit famous, and he is really become synonymous with Austin City Limits and Austin, for that matter, for the type of music that he plays, but obviously because of his incredible live performances and the like. There's a story that I learned in the book about Austin City Limits, about Willie Nelson. In fact, Willie Nelson, while he's considered the pilot show to kick off this incredible run that you guys have had, he wasn't the original pilot act. Tell us that story.
So the original act was a singer-songwriter named B.W. Stevenson, who just coincidentally was one of my favorite singer-songwriters when I was, in early Austin in the 1970s. And we brought B.W. in to play. B.W. was later, probably his biggest hit over the years was My Maria, which actually then he gave it to Brooks and Dunn?
Brooks and Dunn.
Brooks and Dunn, yeah. So Brooks and Dunn, if you ever hear My Maria, that's a B.W. song. So he came in and performed. The audience was small, the setting didn't work, the production values kind of stunk. And so after looking at it and deciding, the crew made a decision to ditch B.W. Stevenson. And the interesting thing is that episode disappeared then for decades. Nobody knew where it was. There was an assumption back in the old days of 2-inch tapes particularly. We used to record over 2-inch tapes because they're expensive, and you needed a tape, you go grab something that nobody wanted and just put it in and record over.
You said 2-inch tapes.
2-inch tapes.
Got it.
Yeah, that was back, they were, things this big. So so we assumed that it had been recorded over, and then we just finished a long process to digitize 8,000 hours of Austin City Limits performances.
Wow.
And in the course of doing that digitization, we discovered the B.W. Stevenson episode. So no one's ever seen it, really, outside of a few of us at the station, and eventually we look forward to making that available.
Great. So, Tom, I'll turn to you. You are the leader of Austin City Limits, general manager. And, one of the things that Bill talked about was how, that original pilot show that was supposed to be the kickoff, from a production standpoint, just wasn't right. It couldn't give the organization the product that it needed. Can you talk about Austin City Limits and how important live music and the overall look and feel and sound that's made it so unique, and ultimately has influenced Austin as the hub for live music performances?
So your question's about the production, or?
Yeah, the production, how the earliest decision to not go along with that first pilot set a tone for the type of show that you all are trying to produce all the time with live music performances.
Well, I'm going on 9 years as the GM of ACL, and I'm by far the baby of the bunch. Terry Lacona, our executive producer, has been there for 42 years. David Huff, our audio engineer, Gary Minotti, our director, have been there since day one. The people who work behind the scenes at Austin City Limits are unbelievably committed to the quality and integrity of the performance. And I think clearly it started from the first day when you say this B.W. Stevenson episode is not as good as we can do, so that's not what we're going to put on the air. Every show since then, from booking the artist, which there's a lot of decision making and a lot of thought that goes into who is booked on Austin City Limits, but so before they ever step on the stage, they've been vetted for creativity, for quality, for something special. And we're not looking at how many records they're selling or what position they are on the charts. It's how good are they, and what is that going to mean when they step on that stage. And then from there, it's using the best available technology, whether it's camera or audio, lighting, everything that we can do to make that experience as good as it can be. And then I always say we bring an artist and an audience together, turn on the cameras, and get out of the way. And it's that purity of audience and artist connection that I think is what makes Austin City Limits so special, and why it's lasted for 46 years.
When we had a previous conversation about Austin City Limits and its founding and the foundation of it, one of you shared a story with me about the earliest days of Austin City Limits and the work that went into selling this to the local community, particularly the local bar scene and the like, who at the earliest phases were the hub and for these live performances where people would come to see these live performances. How has Austin City Limits worked with the local music scene and industries and helped to grow that?
Well, I'll speak to the fact that as a public television show, we don't have the budgets that would allow for us to pay to fly an artist in, put them in hotels, per diems, and all the other expenses associated with bringing someone in to tape the show. So we work very closely with C3 Presents, Margin Walker, other promoters here in town who bring artists to play Stubbs, the Irwin Center, the ACL Festival, and those are opportunities for us to do tapings. So we have a lot of communication with the clubs and the bookers around town to say who's coming through and who might be appropriate for a taping. And it's a symbiotic relationship, because part of the reason the acts want to play in Austin, everybody wants to come to Austin and play here, is because of the reputation of Austin as the live music capital of the world. And I think Austin City Limits has had something to do with that.
Yeah. So, Bill, you may be able to expound upon that. This has become, Austin and Austin City Limits has become sort of like a key milestone in the life of an artist, right? In the earliest days, obviously, was a lot of focus on country and new country and the like, but that isn't still the case anymore.
No.
This platform is something that artists across genres want to get on their belt, and it's usually a good indicator of their quality, as Tom talked about, but more importantly, of their rise. Speak a little bit about how Austin City Limits has made this place, this city, a key milestone in the life of an artist.
Sure. You know, on the issue of country music and it being a country music program, it's kind of, you know, I know there's some PBS folks out there, on the heels of the Ken Burns Country Music series, which, you know, ran and did great for all of the stations. You realize country music's coming back, but it was critical for the show's survival to diversify the genres, diversify the show culturally in all different ways. And so some years ago, we began the process of trying to bring in different artists, you know, going back to Ray Charles, Buena Vista Social Club, Tom Waits, and over the last few years, the show has really become a pretty remarkably diverse showcase. That said, in the early days, the idea was to try to get as many iconic artists on stage as possible, and I think it established the reputation of the show. In the first few years, many of the artists were living in Austin because that was where, you know, we're sort of the cosmic cowboy capital at that point. And as we began to diversify, it became more important to bring in artists from other places. So while we still work Austin artists into every season, it has become a stopping point for artists from all across the country and even international artists as they've come in. I think one of the biggest opportunities for us was when we had Juanes, who's a Colombian singer-songwriter. That was, you know, kind of a break into international. And so now it's on booking agents and publicists, it's on management's radar, and that's made a big difference. So Austin City Limits is about what's going on in Austin, not always, unfortunately, about Austin musicians. But I hope as we move forward in the station, doing some new things, we're going to look at we have a spin-off brand called ACL Presents that we're going to hope to begin to develop some additional properties that will feature more local artists as well.
I want to get to talking a little bit about the different parts that make up this Austin City Limit package, right? Is for lack of a better way to talk about to describe it. But before I get to that, Tom, you know, I think Bill's getting to really the role that Austin City Limits has played in helping to advance the culture and set a cultural tone of what the city of Austin is. Can you talk a little bit about the role that this initiative, which has now become like a world recognized effort, has played in its connection to the culture of this city?
Well, if you look at Austin as the live music capital of the world and the quality of the artists who live here and the quality of the artists that play our stage, I kind of see this symbiotic relationship between tech and the businesses that support Austin City Limits as underwriters. The live music scene here attracts a lot of desirable talent for the businesses here in Austin. So you think about Dell and other businesses that have grown in Austin during the same time that Austin City Limits has grown. We've really grown together. Live music attracts talent for those businesses. Those businesses do very well. They underwrite Austin City Limits. We create live music. We bring it to the world. I know when I was a high school student and I was a musician and I was thinking, where am I going to go to school? And I remember watching Austin City Limits, and I saw the people in the audience look like they were having a great time, and the bands on the stage looked like they were having a great time, and it's like, I want to go there. You know, so I always think of Austin City Limits as kind of this this ambassador or a beacon for Austin that goes out nationally, and now over recent years it's started to go out around the world. And I think people, when you travel and you wear an Austin City Limits t-shirt, you know, they're like, oh, I know where you're from. You know, and it's kind of very closely linked. City of Austin and music and Austin City Limits are very closely linked.
I think that's true. I think it's also important, though, you know, to recognize that Austin City Limits is just part of a larger cultural quilt that goes on in Austin. The movement of Austin as live music capital of the world really probably started with Armadillo World Headquarters, and maybe even with some other clubs like the Victory Grill, which was one of the early clubs on the Chitlin Circuit in the early days. And Austin's always had a music community. There's been a strong and a diverse music community in Austin, and so Austin City Limits was able to pick up on that and develop it and distribute it nationally, as did South by Southwest. And the South by Southwest Music Festival, as it came along, created kind of a validation and a reaffirmation of that, and others. So there's a rich culture in Austin, just like there is in New Orleans or in Memphis or in Minneapolis.
You said New Orleans, right?
I did.
I like that. I like that.
I did that for you.
That's right.
Normally I say New Orleans, but
that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You're a good man.
Yeah, I did that. Anyway, so there's cities all across the country that have that. We've just been fortunate because we've had the opportunity to create this show and send it out into 98% of the markets in the U.S. and 5 continents, and you know, it's created, I think, more of a focus than, you know, perhaps some other areas.
You actually went the place I was about to go, so I'll just piggyback off of that a little bit. We had some of the leaders from South by Southwest here yesterday,
yep.
And another in conversation about their role, right? And you mentioned them a little bit. Talk a little bit about, you know, being in a city, in a place that's known for not only music, but I think, Tom, you may have talked about this in our previous call about Austin City Limits not just being about music, but this is not, and it's not just about entertainment, but that it's a hub. And the South by Southwest folk describe themselves in a very similar way. Talk about the Austin City Limits, not only just the show, but the festival, and being more than just an opportunity for a platform for music and musicians.
I think Austin City Limits has become a lifestyle brand. I think it speaks to the culture of Austin, which is diverse, tolerant, fun. It's an outdoors community. It's a place where people like to come together in community. The Austin City Limits Music Festival, these 2 weekends, and the energy that you feel in the city, I think is really the manifestation of Austin City Limits as a lifestyle. You see an incredibly, unlike any other major music festival, and it is one of the top music festivals in the world, you will not find a more friendly festival. You won't find a more diverse audience. You'll see little kids, you'll see young, old, very diverse demographic group. C3 presents programs the lineup to be diverse and to cater to a large number of people. We have the Austin Kitty Limits brand where families are encouraged to come out. And I think that, is what Austin City Limits as a lifestyle brand means. Certainly music is right in the center of the bullseye. It's people who really love music. But people who love music love community, they love food, they're passionate people, they like to be with one another. And I think that's what Austin City Limits is.
Awesome. The interesting thing that is Austin City Limits and is about your relationship between the nonprofit, that is the PBS affiliate, and Austin City Limits, and the for-profit. Talk about how that partnership began. How did that come about, and how can that be instructive, that partnership, a for-profit entity connected to a clear mission that supports the nonprofit, that is the PBS affiliate. How can that be instructive for those of us in communications that work in foundation and like, trying to find revenue streams to support mission-driven work?
Sure, so I'll start and then kick it to Tom, because the origin of it was sort of a defensive measure on the part of the station. The station for years had produced the show, and the show was a show. It was, something that we created, we put on air, and we really didn't consider it as a brand. We just considered it as a production. And beginning 15, 20 years ago, the station began to think about Austin City Limits as a brand and how to develop it as a brand. And in thinking about it as a brand, you start thinking about monetization. So merchandising at the simplest, things as simple as T-shirts and swag of different kinds. But then you begin to get into possibilities of syndication, of new production, of taking that 8,000-hour archive, figuring out how to monetize it. And there are restrictions on how much a nonprofit can generate from non-mission oriented income. And we didn't want to be in a position where we were defending whether or not T-shirts were mission-oriented income from Austin City Limits. In addition to that, as you begin to go out and commercialize music, you're stepping into kind of a minefield of rights and potential legal issues that we wanted to make sure we had people who understood it and we had some insulation for the nonprofit. So we looked to a number of organizations around the country in Twin Cities, Minnesota Public Radio, the Twin Cities Public Television, to organizations, widespread organizations that have for-profit subsidiaries of nonprofits, particularly associations, and found a base of knowledge out there that allowed us to create this for-profit Austin City Limits that would become the brand extension and brand development unit of the larger nonprofit purpose, and that's what Tom's really been driving in the years he's been here.
Anything to add to that? Or did he say it perfectly?
No, I mean, he said it perfectly, but I think, what ACL Enterprises looks to do is really have that laser focus on the commercial operations around Austin City Limits. KLRU as a public television station has so many moving parts, and the mission to be in the community and to program and all the different things that KLRU does for the city of Austin. It was difficult to have that organization going and then commercialize Austin City Limits at the same time. So it just brings an added layer of focus, as well as the legal and tax and business advantages that it has.
I think one of the key things for communications perspective is having the relationship between KLRU, the for-profit, Austin City Limits Enterprises, KLRU, the nonprofit, Austin City Limits Enterprises, the for-profit. Tom actually wears two hats. He's general manager of ACL on the nonprofit side, CEO of Austin City Limits Enterprises on the for-profit side, and it really allows us to protect and control the way the brand is presented and treated. As opposed to if we had simply outsourced all of the commercial functions to a third party that we didn't have a relationship with, we didn't maintain the sanctity of the organization in some way, I think we would have much less control and possibly see a damage to the brand. So it's been good not to have that.
Let's stay at brand a little bit. So those of us who work in communications professionally, we're always trying to figure out one, how do you maintain a brand and protect the brand, obviously, which is a whole different world and effort. And then, and many times, you have to be innovative and you're trying to extend a brand. Can you guys talk about what your experiences were in creating this brand that is Austin City Limits, and what are you doing to keep it fresh and appealing in a new generation?
So obviously the core of the brand is the television show. And we've talked about what the television show means and how it started. And about 26 years into the life of the television show, there was the idea to have this music festival. In 2002, in Zilker Park was the first Austin City Limits Music Festival. And I guess it's now celebrating its 18th year, or 17th year. And it has revitalized the brand in a different kind of way, and it's introduced the brand to a new generation of typically younger fans. And then 9 years ago, ACL Live at the Moody Theater comes online, and that brings a new extension to the brand and kind of another type of audience that we're serving. And then a year ago, actually almost exactly 1 year ago today, ACL Radio goes online, and now we have a radio station that is 365 days a year of Austin City Limits, playing music inspired by the television show, the festival, and the venue. So there was a time, I think, where there was some concern on how do you fence this all in, and are we going to lose the brand? And so I would speak to two things from a communication standpoint. One is choose your partners wisely. And I think with C3 Presents, with Stratus Properties, with the MS Radio group that we did ACL Radio with, we chose three really good partners that understood the intrinsic value of our brand going in. They lived here, they knew it, they understood it. They could really be in touch with what Austin City Limits meant. And then the second part is to have some sort of oversight. You know, make sure within your agreements and within your working relationship that there is an acceptable level of oversight, that if you find that your partner is drifting outside the lanes of what you want your brand to be, that you do have the ability to kind of bring them back to focus and back to center. Ultimately, at some point, the brand takes on a life of its own. And for many years, I think we tried to correct people about, oh, well, you know, that's the festival, that's the venue, that's the radio station, we're the television show. Now I just embrace it all. You know, I just embrace it all. There's a lot of things here in town that want to put, you know, city limits on the end of it, you know, and just like there were a lot of things in the world that tried to put, you know, Palooza on the end of stuff. And I read Perry Farrell from Lollapalooza saying at some point we just decided that that was an homage, and it only helped our brand. You know, for if someone cares enough that they're going to call their elementary school fair, you know, school city limits, you know, that's awesome. And it just means that what we've created at KLRU with Austin City Limits is special to a lot of people.
That's awesome. All of us that build and have the responsibility to grow brands also have the responsibility to protect the brand. And I think Tom kind of start to talk a little bit about the efforts that we go through to protect the brand, and sometimes we have to realize that, you know, we can't put so many boundaries on it, and at some point we've got to allow it to be what it's going to be to consumers. But can you talk about at any moment where the brand was compromised or challenged, and what you all had to do in order to really protect it?
You know, it's an interesting question, Tyronne, because in all candor, I can't think of a moment when the brand was really compromised over its history. And I really never thought about that question before. I can think of times when there have been challenges. Tom referred to, you know, when we started to do trademark licensing out to festival or out to venue, and people became concerned about, you know, what if the venue, what if the theater where you guys were the other night brings in Chippendales or brings in monster truck rallies? Is that going to damage the brand? And so we put some language in the agreements, and we have learned over the years that's not an issue. We had a guy come to us one time who was developing casinos along the Gulf Coast and wanted to put Austin City Limits Bar and Grill into the casinos. And we made the decision that was not consistent with the brand equity and the brand promise that we had. So we turned that down. In all honesty, I think the station, and this isn't Tom or me, it's everybody involved, including the board and our brand partners, have done a good job of protecting it, and I can't think of a point where I'd look at it and say it's been compromised.
I think our fans police us more than we do internally. And I love the fact that fans are passionate enough to write in, and when you book Pearl Jam or Modest Mouse or Arcade Fire, and they think that Austin City Limits means Stevie Ray Vaughan and Waylon Jennings and Merle Haggard, and they might say, this isn't my Austin City Limits, I don't know who this guy is on the television that I was watching last night. Obviously, we want to bring a diverse music offering to the world. That's what we want to do. But each person kind of has their own idea. Each fan or each generation has their own idea of what Austin City Limits is and what it means to them. And the wonderful thing is that all 8,000 hours that we've recorded so far are preserved, and they're there to be enjoyed by these generations for years to come. And I think each person kind of has their own experience with it. But internally, I don't think we've really had a point in time where I felt like the brand was jeopardized.
I think one of the things that continues to blow my mind, looking at it from a PBS standpoint, I've been with PBS for 15 years, and I've watched Austin City Limits change and diversify over the years. And like all broadcast television, our audience tends to be older. Online is a different demographic, but 55 and up, maybe 65 and up is the iconic viewer. And Austin City Limits continues to play across the country. But while we've moved from being a country music show and, with the more traditional artists, suddenly we've got Kendrick Lamar and Run the Jewels and Rosalia and, I always think about the 70-year-old couple in Butte that, is sitting there turning on Austin City Limits on Saturday night, and the raconteurs are on, and I think, wow, it's amazing that we still seem to get embraced and people keep coming back. So, it's great.
So you all, I'll allow us to go to this great festival that kicks off today. Tell us what you're most excited about with Austin City Limits Festival this year.
Acts or just the experience?
Acts first.
Well, Guns N' Roses is coming. That's pretty cool.
That's tonight, right?
Guns N' Roses is tonight. Rosalia, who Bill mentioned, is from Barcelona, and I think she is somebody that we're actually going to tape next week, and she's going to surprise a lot of people. A lot of people who don't know who Rosalia is are going to become big Rosalia fans after this next week here in Austin. We've got Billie Eilish coming to the festival, who is beyond a musical icon. She's a cultural phenomenon. We're going to be taping her. Lizzo is another one who's fantastic.
Got some Lizzo fans out there.
Yeah. But we made a conscious decision with Austin City Limits, we air 13 new episodes a year. Most often, an episode features 2 artists. Occasionally, we'll give an hour to a superstar to take up the full hour. So if you're Robert Plant or Paul Simon or
Tyronne Walker.
Tyronne Walker would certainly get a full hour.
I'm ready.
Based on this performance, you're an hour.
Well, look, I'm grateful for it. It's awesome.
But we made a conscious decision, and this is very rare, that a debut artist, someone who is just coming out, is going to get a full hour, and that's Billie Eilish. And her audience tends to be much younger, kind of teenage, female. And, to Bill's point about the elderly couple sitting in Butte, Montana, they're going to see an hour of Billie Eilish with no commercials, and she is on the cutting edge of creativity and what she brings to the stage. But we're going to create a moment for PBS PBS does very, very well with the young kids and then with adults, but typically teenagers are not the sweet spot. We're going to attract a lot of teenagers to PBS for an hour of Billie Eilish, and we did that very consciously because we want to create an event. We want to create something that really draws people to PBS. In addition to the artists I just mentioned, I'm also always excited by just the experience at ACL Festival. Being in Zilker Park in downtown Austin, it is going to be a little hot this weekend, but
not as hot as New Orleans.
It's beautiful. The people are friendly. The music is great. The food is good. It's just, like I said, it's the living embodiment of the Austin City Limits brand. So I'm always just excited about sharing the experience.
That's interesting. So much in communications is about sharing best practices and learning from others, from their successes and failures as well. How has this creation of Austin City Limits and the great outgrowth it's had, how has that helped the rest of the PBS world in America?
Wow, I don't know that I.
You can toot your own horn here.
Yeah, I don't know that I could make that claim. I think that let me first of all say, without even a doubt, Austin City Limits would not be finishing its 45th season if it wasn't for PBS. Music
100%.
doesn't last on TV. Music series will last a while. American Bandstand lasted for a while. Soul Train lasted for a while, a couple of others, but that was decades ago. And music today, other than the occasional special, you don't see music programs on primetime television. For whatever reason, they don't draw the audiences. You don't draw the audiences, you don't draw the sponsors. You don't create funds. So the fact that PBS has the model that it has and has been able to maintain its purity is what really allows Austin City Limits to exist. Having said that, Austin City Limits has kept a place for performance that's not strictly classical. Great Performances does a great job with classical music, with Broadway, Metropolitan Opera does a great job with opera, but we really held that base of performance of popular music across multiple popular genres. Now Live from the Artist Den has come forward. There's other music shows that have been created, and probably every couple months we get a call from somebody saying, we're going to start a music show. Can we come visit with you about what you do? And we say, sure, come visit with us. So I think we've been able to secure that as a legitimate piece of PBS programming. But I wouldn't claim that we've made anything of PBS that it isn't capable of making of itself.
Well, when people come to ask you how to do it, that means you're doing a pretty good job.
It makes us feel good, and the quick answer is it's not easy.
Yeah.
I mean, the point about we wouldn't last this long if we were anywhere else but PBS. The core value of Austin City Limits is the integrity of the library of music that we've accumulated over the last 45 years. And Terry and the producers that have been booking talent for the last 45 years have been able to do so in the PBS world where they wouldn't if they were on a commercial network. A commercial network is going to say, bring me the biggest stars, bring me the biggest rated performers that we can have on television this week. When you start to play that game, integrity goes out the window, and quality of music goes out the window. And what we have now is this incredible library of quality music, and everybody in the audience right now has a phone, and they've got 8 million songs on the phone, whether it's through Spotify or Apple or Amazon or YouTube. And one of the big challenges in our world today of music, when you've got so much choice, is where do you find the quality? Where's the curation? And the service that Austin City Limits provides to the music fan is this curation of quality music that we've been privileged to be able to do because of our relationship with PBS, and only booking stuff that is great and not necessarily worrying about booking stuff that's going to rate and is going to produce a result for the advertiser.
Back to that concept about brand and protecting the brand, obviously, and staying true to it, and which gets to, obviously, a big part of many of us here at this conference. We're doing communications for nonprofits that are mission focused, and so completely tied to obviously staying mission focused as well. Look, you all have had a front row seat to some of the best musicians in the world, and your partners have as well. And obviously, you talked a lot about the vast library of great music and history that is at your disposal at Austin City Limits. So much of how musicians, or how we as a culture communicate and express ourselves, is through music. What are artists today expressing through their music that's unique?
Wow,
I'll yield to you on that one.
that's a good one.
That was really a Sean question.
That was a
from,
good
from our
question.
call. It was so good, I wrote it down, and I wanted to keep it going.
You know, I think that the messages that they're expressing are the messages that we've expressed as human beings since music has been created. So it's love and death and anger and hate and politics and freedom and every topic you can think of. What I find really interesting, and what we've seen kind of in this season and some of our other recent seasons, you mentioned Kendrick Lamar. We had a band called Rainbow Kitten Surprise that was on. We just had a band called Cage the Elephant, and Billie Eilish is going to do the same thing. I love how musicians now, and this is a good New Orleans analogy, but they're drawing from so many different genres of music. And we're not just seeing a country artist or a rock artist or a hip-hop artist. Kendrick Lamar had a live band that brought jazz and rock and soul and hip-hop together on the stage. Rainbow Kitten Surprise has bluegrass and hip-hop elements and rock elements and psychedelic elements. So as we've been in this digital age able to consume more music, and this world of musical genres and styles are available at our fingertips, this younger generation of musicians right now, they're just encyclopedias, and they've got all of it. And then they're putting it in the pot and stirring it up and delivering something that is really cool and really unique. I was worried a few years ago, where are the next headliners going to come from? All the headliners that we were seeing at festivals and all the big acts we were booking were largely acts that kind of came up through the traditional major label system. And we looked at the touring numbers, and it was still Elton John and Paul McCartney and Bruce Springsteen, and all these kind of heritage acts were still the ones dominating the box office and dominating the airwaves. Now we've seen an incredible new generation of musicians that are coming up, and again, they're expressing traditional themes, but they're doing so in a way that I find really, really compelling, and it makes me hugely optimistic about the future of music.
That's really awesome. Bill,
I'll let that stand.
You've talked a lot about the formation of Austin City Limits, and you've, to your credit, I think, talked a lot about the individuals inside of the organization that have been there from the beginning. How has it been as an organization to keep good talent, and that being what part has that played in building this product that is Austin City Limits? That is one of the conversations we've been having at the conference, has been around building strong teams, right, and building talented teams. And we know that's critical to any operation, especially in communications. Talk a little bit about the team and the continuity you have from people that have been able to stick with you all for a while.
Yes, it's an interesting question, because there's always this tension between how do you bring in younger talent, new ideas, but also make sure that you're still always honoring and serving the people that have been a part of it forever. Now, Tom said we've got people who literally were in Austin City Limits who were there since the first episode. So that's 45 years and 45 times 13, whatever that comes out to, episodes. And I think the quality of the show, the look of the show, the history of the show is a function of those individuals. And I think those individuals have stayed that long because of the sheer enjoyment of what they do, just the process of loving music and loving production and having it down to such a science. So the challenge with that core group is, when you do bring in new talent from outside, cameramen or publicists or whoever it may be, you're not just bringing a new employee in, you've got to really integrate someone into an ecosystem and recognize that every change you make to an ecosystem has the potential to screw things up. And so, that process of onboarding and bringing in is something that has to be done really, really carefully. We've had issues over the years with equipment, with people, with artists, and you build an organization that's resilient enough to absorb those and respond in a positive, constructive way. So, that's really about the best thing I can say. Is it is a place that people like to work, and a program specifically that people love to produce.
Yeah, the challenge of bringing new people into Austin City Limits is you can't get anybody else to leave. So there's never, it's such a privilege to be a part of this brand and this show that I think that's why you see people that have been here for 40 years. It's very, very special and very rare.
You all, we've got time for 2 more questions, but you all have been giving out a lot of good nuggets, right? So if you could, what advice would you give to communications professionals around developing communication strategies for products and brands and initiatives, right? So Austin City Limits is a product ultimately, and it's a brand that you're constantly cultivating and growing and by new innovations. What have been some of the strategies that you guys have employed to extend that brand and further promote and bring more people in to the product that you have?
I'll say one thing and then kick it to Tom. I mean, from my standpoint, I think a lot of times people become more interested in the visual aspects of the brand than in the spiritual aspects of the brand. I think as you begin the process and when with Austin City Limits, as you embrace the notion that this isn't just a show, it's a brand, really understanding what you want the brand attributes to be and how you build a brand promise that's directed at the audience that you're hoping to reach. And then how you enforce those attributes and brand promise as you're doing extensions into new products and new offerings. And if at some point you've got to reevaluate, if you want to rebrand, you're not just changing the mark. You've got to keep in mind what you're doing to the trust and the expectations of the audience that you've developed, and how you carry those attributes into the individual representations, I think is always critical. But it starts with the spiritual aspects and not really the visual aspects.
So I'm a good I try to be a good Baptist guy. Not my grandmother would say that I'm not doing that good of it. But it is not normal, or it's not common for a professional, particularly in music and the like, to talk about a spiritual aspect of a body of work. And I know you don't mean that in a religious sense, but speak more to what that means for the work that you all do in mission-driven work.
Well, I think PBS is, probably one of the best examples of that, in the sense that the most critical brand attribute of PBS is trust. And how you make sure that you're maintaining trust with your audience, that you're maintaining trust with your partners, that you're maintaining a level of trust within the system and the employees and the organizers, whatever it may be, and protecting that is critical. And we said earlier, Austin City Limits is about an intimate experience between the artist and audience. That can be how the radio is the programming lists are put together. It can be when we honor an artist for the Austin City Limits Hall of Fame, which is kind of our newest brand extension. I guess radio is actually the newest, but how you make sure that you incorporate that intimate experience into the design of the event. I think you always have to start there, and if you start there, ultimately I think the brand survives and prevails.
Advice?
Speaking to attracting new audiences, there's a number of different ways now that someone can come to the Austin City Limits brand through the television show on PBS. But beyond that, now we have YouTube and streaming and other ways that people can access just the TV component of it. Then you've got a festival experience, you've got a venue experience, you've got a radio experience. We've also started to license the show internationally as well as second window domestic on things like American Airlines, where you can watch Austin City Limits. And anecdotally, I hear more fun stories about people watch, oh, I was, Jack White taped Austin City Limits. The Raconteurs played last night for us. My ears are still ringing. But he said, I was watching my episode on the flight. So people can see the show in a lot of different places. We've also taken our festivals and gone international with Sydney City Limits and Auckland City Limits. And those events bring that experience to people in those markets, and then you can follow up by, you have a festival in Australia, we then look to license core episodes of Austin City Limits to cable in Australia, which then extends our social media presence, which then extends our merchandise presence, and so you just kind of continue to grow in that way. So, our pillar is excellence in live music. That can be at a festival, it can be on television, in a venue, on radio, online.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, Bill and Tom, and obviously we kicked off ComNet in Sean's wisdom at Austin City Limits.
It was great.
Oh, thanks to Bill. It was an amazing experience and an awesome venue. But I think it set a tone for this conference and the type of energy we're going to have here and innovation. And so to be able to hear the story that is how this great brand started and the role that it plays in creating and building this brand that is this unique city, and more importantly, hearing about all the great ideas that you guys are still and innovations that you're introducing. I think it's been a really awesome time to share with all the rest of us and the rest of the ComNet world. So thank you all. It's been awesome. Thank you. Hopefully I see you all in New Orleans soon.
Yeah. Great.
Great job.